Get started here. Welcome everybody. Big chapter today. Very big chapter. Chapter 12 is one of the foundational chapters in all of Tanya. And continuing along the discussion and the conversation of the Beinoni. So the Tzaddik is the one who we cannot reach. The Rasha is the one who we should not reach. And the Beinoni, however, is the ideal of the Tanya.
Just right.
Exactly. One that every Jew should try to strive to become. So in the previous chapters, the Alter Rebbe defines the term tzaddik and rasha. That's chapters 10 and 11, which we did last week. Tzaddik, he explains, is the one in whom the good qualities of his soul overcome the evil qualities of his animal soul, to the extent that he has completely eradicated it. And to what extent depends on if it's the complete tzaddik or the incomplete tzaddik. A rasha is one whom the evil qualities of his animal soul, it's reversed, it's flipped. The evil qualities of his animal soul, and we say evil primarily referring to the selfish, self-oriented qualities of his animal soul, overcome the good qualities of his divine soul, causing him to sin in his garments, in behaviorally, in both in the three categories of thought, speech, and action. The Beinoni, he keeps these desires in check. He never permits them any practical manifestation. We discussed this briefly in chapter 9, but he comes back to it here in this chapter. V'habeinoni, I'll read it in the Hebrew. V'habeinoni hu she'le'olam ein hara gover kol kach lichbosh et ha'ir ktana. The Beinoni, the intermediate person, is one in whom the evil of the animal soul never attains enough power to conquer the small city. What's the small city? Us, the body, which is likened to the small city, that both the divine soul and the animal soul wish to dominate. He never allows the evil soul to attain enough power so as to cause him to sin. In other words, to cause him to sin. To express his animal soul's desires. In other words, the animal soul's convictions, the animal soul's desires, they are very present, but they never manifest themselves behaviorally. Neither in the brain, causing the person to think forbidden thoughts, that's through the animal soul's garments of thought, nor in the mouth, which is causing the person to speak forbidden words, no problem, which is through the garment of speech, nor in any other of the organs of the person, of the body, causing the person to act in a forbidden manner, which is in the garment of action. Machshava, dibur, ma'aseh, thought, speech, and action. Were that to happen, were the animal soul to find any expression, any manifestation behaviorally, then he would no longer be considered a Beinoni. He would be in the category of rasha, where the animal soul has taken over, has conquered the body even temporarily. Only the three garments. The Beinoni allows for only the three garments of the divine soul to find expression, and these are thought, speech, and action related to the 630 commandments of the Torah. So if it is only, what's the barometer, what's the test? If the godly soul is the only soul that finds expression in your thought, speech, and action, then you're a Beinoni. If the animal soul finds expression in thought, speech, and action, then you're not considered a Beinoni. You're a potential Beinoni, but you're not a Beinoni. The tzaddik has rid himself completely of the enemy, which is the animal soul in this case, but the Beinoni still very much has these two souls, and each with its own aspirations, with his own expectations, with his own perspectives. And the Beinoni experiences not only the nefesh elokis, the godly soul, but also the negative impulses, the negative desires, the nefesh habahamit, the behema within. Except that he never allows for these desires to become actualized on a level, again, of behavior.
So we're always between rasha to Beinoni.
Yes.
Feels like
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Because if we're between those two, we're at least in a good rank. So the Beinoni is one whose perception is very much divided. He possesses both the animalistic inclinations, the impulses, the attitudes, the desires, the instincts, right, on a very conscious level. So we're describing someone that we're very familiar with, someone that has the pull towards physicality, mundanity. But the Beinoni is extraordinary in the sense that he may experience these inclinations monthly, possibly, weekly, hourly, sometimes even moment by moment, but he is exceptional because the Beinoni never allows these feelings, these inclinations, these lusts to dictate his behavior whatsoever. Never finds any actualization in his concrete behavioral life, neither in thought, speech, and action. In the life of the Beinoni, these garments, thought, speech, and action, are reserved exclusively to be an expression in his service to God, his nefesh elokis, his godly soul.
Right. Is it thoughts? So, I mean, I understand in my behavior, right? But if you even have a thought, then...
Great question.
Okay.
Great question. Because in my notes here, this is what your question is what we're going to address right now. The Alter Rebbe explains, what does it mean that the Beinoni doesn't actualize the desires of the animal soul in thought? After all, negative thoughts may enter the mind. They pop in. It seems like it's out of our control. So the Alter Rebbe distinguishes, very crucially, the Alter Rebbe distinguishes between passive thought and active thought. What's passive thought?
Like you're going to do something with that, or?
No, more of what's passive thought, something that pops into your mind. Just something, oh my gosh, that guy. Or, someone cuts you off in traffic, right? It pops into your mind. You didn't control that. It's these are the thoughts that arrive instinctively. And this is a reflection of what the heart is feeling. So the heart is feeling something and boom, it feeds into the mind and it pops into your mind. If the animal soul experiences a craving, that desire will naturally register in your mind. You see a food, it may not be kosher or it's Tisha B'Av, next week it might be a fast day. Oh, I want to eat that, right? It pops into your mind. The Beinoni is not expected to prevent these thoughts from entering into his mind. Now, eventually, if the Beinoni really trains himself, it will happen less and less and less. If you're refined of a refined character, which is the Beinoni is constantly refining his character, then it will be less frequent. There will be less antagonizing, right? Terrorizing him constantly with these negative thoughts. However, the Beinoni is not expected to prevent, to control these thoughts from entering into his mind. His choice is of what happens next. Not about acting on it. Well, not about acting on it, but allowing himself to proactively continue to think about it.
Like when
Even
you
if it's in
change
thought. Yes. The Beinoni can choose whether or not he wants to dwell on this thought or not. Will he stop, redirect his thought, his mind elsewhere? How? Simply thinking about something else, right? Is thought considered an action? It could be, because I can ask you to think of a mathematical equation. Think about what is, 7 times 7, and you can then I say stop thinking about that. How can I say stop thinking? That you say stop to an action.
49.
you that was an activity. It was a mental activity. So there is a category of thought which is actionable. That's where the Beinoni does not allow it to find expression. So the Beinoni doesn't control which thought knocks on the door, but he controls which thought he invites inside. And this is referring actually to a beautiful story. This is a try to remember the Hasidic master. It might have been the Maggid of Mezrich. That someone went to it could have been the Baal Shem Tov, but someone that was having disturbing thoughts in the middle of prayer went to his Rebbe, and he said, I need help with trying to not allow for these thoughts. They're disturbing me. They're bothering me. They're not allowing me to focus. They're just very distracting. So he sends him he says, go to Zev Wolf. I of Zhitomar. He sends him to this person's house, and he knocks on the door, and no answer. So maybe he's not home. But then he hears something going on inside. He sees there's activity or hears there's activity inside. So he knocks louder, and he goes around, and he sees that he's right there. He's standing inside. And so he knocks. He's on the window. He's knocking, and he's being completely ignored. Eventually, he doesn't know what to do. What's happening? The Baal Shem Tov sent him, or his Rebbe sent him. And eventually, the door opens, and he says, "What's going on? I was knocking." Just to ask him why he doesn't open the door, for he was knocking. He says, "Look, I can't control who knocks on my door. I can control who I allow in." And after he heard that line, he turned around. He went right back, understanding exactly what his what the lesson was. So the thoughts that pop up into our mind, those that we can't necessarily control, but we could certainly choose what we allow in. So the Beinoni is not the tzaddik. The Alter Rebbe clearly defines that and reminds us of that constantly. And why is that so important? We'll discuss a little bit later in the class. But the Alter Rebbe does highlight something interesting. There are certain times in the life of the Beinoni that he achieves a certain state in which internally the godly soul is the only reality being expressed and experienced at that particular time. When is this specifically? Davening, during prayer. And specifically, he highlights two prayers, the Amidah prayer and Kriyas Shema, the saying of Shema. And these are two special times, explains the Alter Rebbe, that the Beinoni is able to achieve a state of mind similar to the state that's experienced by the tzaddik. This serenity, this peacefulness, where the only active soul within him at that time is the godly soul. And it's not necessarily will that happen, but it can happen. Davening, he explains, is a very unique time. There's a particular energy that exists within the universe during the time of davening. So when it's your time of davening, that energy it's present. And the Alter Rebbe teaches us that it's this extraordinary time, that it's not only, davening is not only a time that we recite these words and we repeat these words and ask for personal blessings. It's also that, but it's a window. Davening is a window in which godliness becomes much more accessible, and therefore his godly soul becomes much more active. And that even this exists for all of us. Even if we don't consciously feel that energy, fully tap into it, the opportunity is still present. So there are times where the Beinoni taps into this level, this state, and this becomes a very important time for the Beinoni because it's a spiritual recharge for the day. Because the animal soul, the battle within is relentless. So for the Beinoni to experience the moment of sort of that peacefulness, where he can not experience the constant internal struggle and the inner voice of doubt of pulling him in all directions, that takes place during davening. Because he contemplates on Hashem's greatness, he connects with his divine soul in such a real way and a deep way, feeling this deep love for Hashem, that this temporarily, during these moments, it quiets the desires, the inner voice of the animal soul. And this gives him the strength. The Alter Rebbe says after davening, he goes back right into the world, and the animal soul rears its ugly head. But the remaining sort of inspiration from davening carries on to the rest of the day. When you plug in your phone, while it's plugged in, it's connected to the source. But after you unplug it, now it's tapping into the battery life from when it was plugged in. So davening is when you plug in, get that recharge, and immediately the energy starts to fade. However, because he has that remaining energy from that recharge, that's what allows him to continue throughout the day to be able to overcome this battle. So davening becomes, and we'll talk about this throughout Tanya, how essential prayer, davening is in the life of the Beinoni, and therefore for us in our journey, prayer, tefillah. And he says like this, Aval achar tefillah, after, it's a rude awakening, he says. After prayer, he's sitting there in this moment of relaxation, of peace, of his connection to Hashem. He's flying high. this transcendental experience. Aval achar tefillah, harei hara chozer b'chalal hasmali. The ra, the animal soul, immediately returns. Umetaveh ta'ava letavot olam hazeh v'tanugav, and he once again experiences these desires and these lusts and these temptations towards physical things.
So it's amazing. It's like you have 100% in the morning, and then it's go down until the.
Well, then
the
there's,
Kriyat Shema,
but we have
and then-
three. We have three prayers a day. That's why davening is so essential, because it gives us those moments of inspiration. And in this way, we can all relate to the Beinoni, because we all have these moments of genuine inspiration. May not be as frequent as the Beinoni, which can do so daily, whether it's on Yom Kippur, whether it's after hearing a powerful story, a song, after leaving a class, where godliness really feels so alive, it feels real, and we sincerely think that this is what I want my life to be about. That's what the Beinoni experience is during davening. It's a very powerful moment, because we can feed off of that, at least for the time thereafter. May not be very long, but there is a residual inspiration and effect and motivation that it has. But then the moment passes, the inspiration fades, the spiritual experience then feels like a very distant past, and even could feel unreal, because you seem like that couldn't have been me, the guy who's experienced all these inner feelings. The Beinoni is the person who experiences this struggle in a very real way. He lives with this tension constantly. He possesses two souls, two perspectives, and when he comes into contact with godliness during davening at the special time, it fills his entire personality. He's so convinced this is who he wants to be, and then he later enters back into the world, the real world, life, the workforce and relationships and everything, and he suddenly remembers that the physical world is also a very real thing. And yet, once again, the Beinoni is extraordinary in the sense that he never allows these feelings to become manifest in a practical way. So he feels what we feel, but he doesn't allow it to become manifest. The desires exist, the temptations, the distractions exist, but the Beinoni never allows it to be implemented. He never will do something contrary to the divine blueprint, to that of the will of the godly soul that is within him. Not even engaging in a forbidden thought. Again, passively, pops into his mind, perhaps, not engaging. So now the question is, we've been building up to this question, how does the Beinoni achieve this remarkable feat?
Of overcoming the passive? Which feat?
Of never allowing his animal soul to find any implementation and expression.
That's what I'm asking
I see.
myself. Because never it's like,
And his thoughts
you
speak
can't
then.
get mistake.
After all of this build-up, we're finally ready to answer this question. But I want to warn you first, as a disclaimer, is that the answer is so simple that at first it might feel underwhelming. But don't let its simplicity fool you, because it's actually precisely what makes it so powerful, because it's not an abstract idea. It's not this theoretical idea reserved for spiritual giants. The Beinoni's method for being a Beinoni is practical, it's attainable, and it's available to every one of us. Doesn't mean it's not hard, but it is certainly practical. And again, maintaining it throughout our whole lives to be the level of the Beinoni, very difficult. But appreciating how he does it, very, very attainable. In the words of the Alter Rebbe, it's possible because, we'll read it in the Hebrew first, Ki hamoach shalit al halev b'toldato v'teva yitzirato. Because the brain rules over the heart by virtue of man's innately created nature. We'll unpack this in a moment. Shekach notzer ha'adam b'toldato, for man was created from birth in such a way, shekol adam, every person, yachol birtzono, every person is created in such a way that through the power of his will within his brain, can restrain himself and can control the drive of his heart's desires, to prevent the desires of his heart from finding expression in deed, in speech, or in thought. And he can completely divert his attention from that which his heart craves and turn his attention in the exact opposite direction. What we are describing here is the basic God-given gift that was placed within every single healthy human being, the power of self-control. That's it. The mind alone is sufficiently powerful enough to direct our attention away from the cravings, from the desires, and from what we speak and act in the negative sense. The nature of man is that the mind rules the heart. Moach shalit al halev. This statement is the secret of the Beinoni, and it's one of the most fundamental ideas in the entire book of Tanya. A person has a desire to do something. He feels a powerful lust towards something that's unhealthy, that's immoral, that's spiritually damaging. And not just speaking about small desires, but we can be even talking about the most powerful ones, right? Because at times, a person who's going to experience an impulse for something, what does the Beinoni do? The Beinoni, like all of us, possesses a mind. And his mind says that this lust is unhealthy, physically, psychologically, or spiritually, that it goes against my identity, it goes against my creator, it goes against the Torah, so he simply chooses to not engage. The nature of our mind, the mind is naturally stronger than the heart. That's how God created it. That the mind has the capacity to overcome the heart. The mind has the ability to overpower what the heart wants. When the mind and the heart are brought into direct conflict, the Alter Rebbe soon is going to describe this literally as a wrestling match. When the heart and mind go into direct conflict, the mind necessarily has the ability to prevail. It is stronger. This is not merely a prediction. This is not some mystical power like a blessing that God is giving. The ability to exercise self-control, even when the heart feels and wants something very strongly, is built into human nature. It is human nature that the mind can rule the heart. Self-control. In fact, when a person cannot control himself or herself, when a person is constantly erupting in anger or in every impulse, we recognize that person as being unhealthy, that something is wrong. One of the defining qualities of a healthy human being is the ability to pause, to think, and to control his behavior. We teach our children all the time. You have to learn to control yourself. Is this easy? No.
Okay.
On that note.
Whole time.
In-
The whole time. It's just like it's been
Enjoy the cookie. Elevating the cookie, taking the energy that you're gonna take.
It's delicious. Good.
These are my favorite.
And it's helping me to learn, and my divine soul is saying you need to sow.
This is when the divine soul and the animal soul are working in unison. It's a beautiful thing.
I've just elevated to the inner need level.
Self-control. It's not always easy. At times it could actually be tremendously difficult. But the Beinoni is not relying on, again, a mysterious or an abstract idea that only he possesses. Oh, he's a Beinoni, he possesses this gift. No, he's using a tool that's available to every healthy adult. The ability to control themselves. So you might ask, okay, if this is the case, then why does the mind not always win? If the mind over matter, if self-control is a God-given ability, innate to all of us, natural to all of us, how many Beinonim do I see around? The answer is that there are many potential Beinonim. And yes, the heart does often win. And we do allow it to take control over our lives. Why? Not because we don't have the ability to control ourselves. We simply don't utilize this ability. We don't put up a fight. But don't make the mistake to think that because you didn't put up the fight and that the heart therefore got the better of the mind, that it's stronger. That's not the case. Naturally, the mind is truly stronger. And the Beinoni is the person. What separates the Beinoni from the non-Beinoni is that the Beinoni chooses to exercise this capacity, the capacity of the mind, consistently. I'm going to give a few examples so we can try to relate to this idea. Imagine you have an extremely important business meeting in the morning. A great deal depends on this meeting. A lot is on the line. Or you have a flight to catch to go somewhere that was very important. Or there's a procedure, a medical procedure that's very significant and important. You set the alarm rings, and your heart says, stay in bed, you're exhausted, sleep a little longer. What is that person going to do if it's a healthy person?
Do what they need to do, get out of bed.
Do what they need to do, get out of bed. Your heart may protest, it might put up a serious fight, but your mind understands what's at stake, and therefore the mind will win. Why? Because the mind naturally possesses the ability to overrule the heart. Now take the same person, but a different morning. He sets his alarm, but he does so this time because he wants to help his wife prepare breakfast for the kids before they go to school in the morning, or he wants to get up to wake up for morning minyan. The alarm rings, but this time what happens?
He hits the snooze button.
He hits the snooze button. He goes back to sleep. What changed? Last week, he has the crucial meeting. He demonstrated that he's fully capable of getting up. He possessed the naturally God-given self-control then. Does he not possess it now? Of course he does. Now he'll say, I couldn't help myself. I was so tired, I couldn't, it was out of my control. That's not true. The difference is not his ability. The difference is at this time he did not decide that the matter was important enough to win this fight. The same person who can be too tired to go downstairs to turn off a light right before, I should go downstairs, turn off the lights, but if that same person remembers that a stove was left on, the person will go downstairs. What changed? His strength? Suddenly he's accessing the secret supernatural power that he has, that this time he gets out of bed and he goes downstairs? No, nothing has changed, only his assessment of what's at stake.
So the reward wasn't big enough.
What's on the line? What's on the line? The reward or what's going to happen if we, right? What's at stake? We see the same thing in parenting. I think all parents can relate to this. Or if all of us are children, we can probably relate to it from when we were children. But you take your child to the grocery store, and your child is throwing a tantrum in the middle of the grocery store because they want something that you don't want to give them. And they're yelling and they're kicking and they're behaving terribly. And at that moment, you're burning with anger. And you want to yell. What are you doing? Oh my gosh. What do you want to do to that child? But what does the parent do? Calm. Then they get to the car. The door closes, and then you respond the way you wanted to respond. Shabbos meal, Shabbos table, it's filled with guests, and your children are acting, misbehaving, maybe saying something inappropriate in front of the guests, and the parent is sitting there thinking, just wait till everyone leaves. Wow, they're going to get, we call it in Hebrew, a chelek, they're going to get a piece. Oh boy, are they going to hear from me. Both of these situations, why did you not react immediately? You were upset. You were filled with perhaps even rage. Why don't you react immediately? Self-control. Because you have the capacity to not react immediately. The battle may be raging inside, but because the parent decides that now is not the proper time or place, the mind controls the reaction. This is precisely what the Beinoni does. He just does this consistently, constantly, day in and day out. It doesn't mean he doesn't feel the craving. It doesn't mean he doesn't feel the impulse. It doesn't mean that those negative thoughts don't pop into his mind. The animal soul is kicking and it's screaming within him. It's like that kid at the grocery store. But the Beinoni continually, constantly chooses to exercise the same self-control that we all demonstrate when we decide that something truly matters. And this is the Alter Rebbe's point. That when the heart wins, it's not because the heart is stronger. It's because the mind never truly entered the battle. Decided that what's at stake is not important enough for me to put up the fight. can we appreciate how just knowing this is a game changer? Because knowing that you have the ability and you possess the ability to control your garments, your thought, your speech, and your action, and it just remains a personal choice, is the first key to unlocking the success of the Beinoni. First, to know that you have the ability to do it. Because the moment you don't think you have the capacity and the ability, then you're already throwing the towel, then you don't even try. If the odds are 50-50 or 60-40, I'm not going to put up the fight today. But simply having that knowledge, the wherewithal, the recognition that you have the capacity to win every single time, it's essential. Yes, the heart's going to put up a serious fight. It'll resist, it'll protest, but the mind is capable of prevailing. And this is one of the reasons why we begin to understand why Chabad is called Chabad, Chachma Bina Das. The Tanya places such an extraordinary emphasis on the intellect, because the mind is not just a part of Jewish life, it's the key that directs the entire person. Thoughtfulness, reflection, mind over heart are fundamental to living as a Jew. The purpose of learning, of contemplating, of attending a Tanya class is not simply to accumulate knowledge and information, but to develop convictions strong enough to guide our behavior. That when the mind becomes clear about what's true, what's right, it can direct the heart and shape the way a person actually lives. It's also not always easy to hear this, because oftentimes we say we do things just because that's who we are. But when we hear this information, we actually understand we do things because we decide to, and we have the ability to choose not to. And the Alter Rebbe gives an actual example of two people wrestling, as I mentioned. He says, here's an example. Imagine you have two people wrestling, and one is clearly stronger than his opponent. And yet he presents a scenario that the weaker one throws the stronger one to the ground. We've been referencing the World Cup over the past few weeks. Imagine you have the biggest upset. So you know that one team is greater, they're a better team. Yet sometimes they lose. And the Alter Rebbe presents this scenario. And he says, in this example, what if the stronger one loses because he was sleeping?
Like French yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they said. We said we didn't put up a battle. Would we determine, imagine if the opponent lost because he was sleeping, would we determine that the weaker one is necessarily stronger? We wouldn't. We understand that the opponent didn't show up that day and tap into his resources and his ability, his natural strength that overcomes and overwhelms his opponent. So if the mind is sleeping, then of course the heart will win. And sleeping could take on many methods. If it's weak, if it's lackluster, if it's lazy, then of course the heart could win. And this is when we're introduced to a key tactic of our opponent, which is the animal soul in this case. When does the weaker opponent, which the animal soul, have the ability to defeat the stronger opponent? What was the example we gave? When the stronger opponent is sleeping. So the animal soul tries to catch the godly soul off guard. He tries to catch the person sleeping. How does he do this? It's a very, very impressive tactic. But also, having this bit of information is extremely helpful. It's called impulse. The animal soul naturally operates through impulse, meaning to do things immediately and quickly. Why? Because it doesn't want to introduce the mind into the struggle, because it knows the mind will win. So it wants to do it right now before you introduce the mind. The mind hasn't been right. When the opponent doesn't show up, it's a forfeit. It wins immediately. That's what it tries to do. The moment a person pauses and begins to think, is this really something I should be doing? Is this really something that I want to do? He'll likely reach the conclusion that this impulse is in fact unhealthy, it's wrong, and inconsistent with who he truly is, right? Imagine having a conversation with your child's about to do something. You say, let's talk about this for a moment. Do you think that's smart? And the child will say, well, I don't know. And then you talk it through, and what's the conclusion if they're mature enough, they'll reach that this is not something that they should do, and therefore they don't do it. So impulse is therefore a part of the very personality of the animal soul. It wants an immediate response because it knows that once the mind enters the fight, it's likely to lose. It tries to catch us off guard, or as I said, sleeping. And so I think about the negative things that we engage with are usually done really quickly, immediately after we want to do them. Like that cookie, let's do it right now. If I think about it too much, I'm probably not going to do it. Not a cookie at a Tanya class,
Yeah.
of course. We're not talking about
They call
that.
it the כוח התנגדות.
Yeah, that's the ability to engage in the battle.
Yeah.
One of the simplest tools for activating the mind and exercising self-control is therefore simply pausing. Stop. Don't immediately give the animal soul what it wants. Don't say no. It's hard to say no to the animal soul. Again, we're not saying that he's not a formidable opponent. He's a strong opponent. Don't immediately say no. You won't necessarily have the strength to do that. Just say, hey, give me a second. Give me 2 seconds. Let me just properly think this through. And what's interesting is the moment it realizes that it's not going to receive the instant compliance of what it wants, it actually begins to withdraw. And then the impulse begins to fade because it waits for another opportunity because it knows it already lost. It knows that it's not stronger. So once you introduce reason, then mind over matter. Then you're going to utilize your self-control. So if it doesn't get it immediately, if you just say pause, then it usually passes quite quickly. What's a classic example? We've all heard this. Someone you
חוק השלוש שניות.
what was that?
Like 3
yeah,
seconds,
the 3 seconds. But what's an example of this? In the email that you want to send, the angry email that you want to send. We all heard. What are we supposed to do?
To wait.
You type up the email, get it out of your system. Just don't wait to send it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send it. I'll send it in 20 minutes. I'll send it tomorrow. But we're told don't send the email when you're angry. Type it out if you must. Don't send it, and then you'll return later. And what happens? You read it with a clearer mind, and you can't believe you ever considered sending it. This is a crazy phenomenon because
But it is. I had a fight with Tal, and I would text them something like that in the night, and then I said, okay, don't send it, and I wait, and the day after I read it in the morning, and I go, oh my God.
right. It's not only that you don't want to send it, you can't believe you wrote that. It's like a different person. But you were going to send it. Why? Because of impulse. Simply waiting causes the impulse to fade, and you look back and you realize it's not even you. So for the mind to win, 2 things are necessary. First, a person has to know that they can win. That was the first bit of information here. Moach, shalit, ala lev. We have, if we're healthy human beings, we have the ability of self-control, mind over matter. The mind is naturally stronger and possesses the ability to control the heart. Second, we must know that we should win. That losing is not insignificant because the opponent could be stronger, but if we're sleeping, because we don't see it as being significant enough, then we won't win either, even though we're stronger. So we have to recognize that the desire is unhealthy, that giving in, and this is what the Beinoni does, is contrary to his values and to who he truly is. So we often fail not because we don't have the strength to win. That's key number 1. We do have the strength to win. So why do we fail? Because we haven't fully recognized either key number 1, which is our ability to overcome, or key number 2, the importance of overcoming. We need to have conviction. When you have conviction, when you realize what's at stake, then you will utilize your God-given ability to be victorious over your animal soul. So he's giving us 2 essential convictions, 2 keys. First, I can win. Second, I need to win. I should win. I should invest in this battle. The battle matters, and giving in is not insignificant. Now, that's also in and of itself very hard. How do you maintain that conviction to constantly defeat? Even though you may be stronger, it's still a battle and a struggle to constantly engage with the animal soul. How do you maintain the conviction to never give in? That's going to be discussed in upcoming chapters. To realize what's at stake when you give into your animal soul, that it's not so simple. It's not just, it was no big deal. It is significant. But we'll discuss that.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
So how you control things that you want them to be more important, like Shabbat, like how, or like kosher, that if the cookie doesn't have the U or the K, it's like.
Give me an example.
I'm going to the Vons. There is cookies that I know the kids love, but now I want to start to look for the U or the K, And I'm like,
Can you choose? Do you have the ability to choose to buy the kosher ones?
yes, I do.
That's the answer. You do.
But how I
You don't necessarily want
I do
to.
it like more important to me.
So you need it has to become to the point where you recognize that not only can you choose, but you should choose. Now I would say in the journey of a Jew in their growth, they shouldn't choose everything immediately.
Because in Israel, like everything is kosher.
Right.
You know, I didn't have this problem. Like everything is kosher.
Right.
Really, it's like it's.
Right?
That's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
Of the
You're describing you're describing the challenge of the non-tzaddik. For the tzaddik, it's not a choice. He doesn't even look at the non-kosher one. He can't. He doesn't even see it. He grabs the kosher one. For the Russia, it's not a choice either. He doesn't really care. You're describing, meaning the complete Russia. You're describing the battle of life, the journey of life. What the Beinoni
I
does.
understand myself more. Like it doesn't seem to me like it's just a big deal. Like it's not a pig. It's not. You know what I mean?
So that means you don't want it enough to choose. You recognize you have the ability to choose. You don't
But it
recognize.
is bother me. It's like here.
Right, but you don't, so that's the battle. You don't yet recognize that it's important enough to win that battle. So what would you do then?
Not yet.
Not yet. So what would you do then? You would study about kashrus and what goes into it and why you are what you eat and how important it is to try to do your best when you can to put kosher food into your body, and especially as a parent to feed your children kosher when you can. And to find and then you don't approach it just in a completely illogical way. You try to find the replacement that your kids love. You don't want them to have a negative experience and a negative, a connotation with your and perspective to your kosher experience, your kosher journey. So you have to try to find things that they'll appreciate as well, which there are alternatives. Not for everything, for most things. And it might be a little harder, and it might be a little bit more expensive. And that's the battle, that's the struggle, and that's the choice you make. The cost benefit, analysis of is this worthwhile to make this investment, despite the fact that I'm going to get pushback, despite the fact that it's not easy. And this is what the Beinoni, that's what all of us struggle with every single time. What separates us from the extraordinary Beinoni is that every time, despite the voice, the doubt, saying don't do it, he chooses every time to do the right thing.
And I would add,
So I need to learn why it is a big deal.
Yes.
I would add mazel tov, meaning you have entered into the struggle. And mazel tov to you for that.
That's a beautiful thing. That's how the
amazing.
Thank you.
It is.
right.
It's
That's a
huge.
beautiful perspective. The mere fact that you're having this internal conversation is so beautiful in the eyes of Hashem. That my child in the store, they're thinking about what they should be eating, what they should be purchasing. That's how much I matter. So it is a beautiful thing.
It seems like this part, the should I part, it almost should come first because that's really based on.
But imagine you realize you should, but you don't think you could.
Well, okay. I guess my point is, should is really a matter of, like you said, it's really studying and understanding and learning, and you're gaining the knowledge to. We're here in this Torah class or this Tanya class, and we're learning it. We're starting to learn what we should do.
But if you don't think you could, you're not even going to engage in that conversation. Right.
And the rabbi would say, just the mere engagement, the beginning of starting a mitzvah, is going to now open up your heart for more.
Good
So
point.
you don't need to have the should necessarily. You just need to start the engagement.
Right. Which is
amazing.
very consistent with the study of Tanya, which this idea, the Beinoni only doing things because he could, is not sustainable. But it's the start. In case of emergency, break glass. First thing to rely on, the first tool you have is self-control. Now that's not sustainable to only do things because you can, because when you don't feel like you should, why you're not going to utilize that tool. So the next thing is then building up the conviction, why I should do this. But now that we understand that the Beinoni controls his behavior, right, using his natural power of his mind to prevent him from entering into any expression, his animal soul finding any expression in thought, speech, and action, it brings us back to our original question, which the Alter Rebbe once again addresses towards the end of the chapter, which is if the Beinoni never allows the animal soul to express itself, why is he not a tzaddik? Never allowing the animal soul to find expression, never? Why is he not a tzaddik? As the Alter Rebbe says, v'af al pikein, nevertheless, eino nikra tzaddik klal. He's not considered a tzaddik at all. Not even an incomplete tzaddik, nothing. Although externally the Beinoni and the tzaddik live identical lives, their actions on the surface might be the same. And from the outside, the Beinoni and the tzaddik appear to be absolutely identical. You couldn't tell them apart. But when we look inside, the picture changes dramatically. They are completely two different people. In their inner makeup, in their inner structure, and their personalities, they couldn't be farther apart from each other. They're not simply standing on two different rungs of the same ladder, right? The tzaddik's a little higher, the Beinoni's a little lower. They're on completely different ladders. They're traveling on different pathways and different roads all together. Indeed, one of the Tanya's greatest contributions is that it creates this entirely distinct model and path for the Beinoni. And it gives a path for this person, a path for the Beinoni of meaning, of value on its own. Before Tanya, we already inherently understand a lot of these ideas because the Tanya has already been taught. We've all heard many of these ideas one way or the other through the teachings of Hasidus and through classes. But before Tanya, so this might sound intuitive to us, but before Tanya is very much not the case. Before Tanya, a Jew was taught that the goal was to become a tzaddik. That's your goal. That's your path. That's your ladder. To eliminate the struggle and to rid yourself of your animal soul entirely. Now imagine that person. Could you imagine if that's what you think your journey is? And then you have that inner frustration of believing that this is who I'm supposed to be, but I'm still filled with this powerful conflict, nonstop tension within? That could crush a person. That's what the Alter Rebbe was responding to. Comes the Alter Rebbe and teaches us, the author of the Tanya, and he teaches us, Yid, my fellow Jew, my dear Jew, there's a different path altogether for you. The Beinoni is not a failed tzaddik. The Beinoni is traveling on a different path, a different road altogether with a mission intended specifically for him. And what's that mission? That his animal soul is going to remain very much alive. It's going to remain very much active and consciously felt, even when you overcome this particular challenge. And you decide you're going to go to the store and buy the ones with the OU, there's going to be another challenge. There's going to be another scenario in which which your animal soul is going to try to convince you that it's not important enough. Because the animal soul remains very much alive, active, and consciously felt within ourselves.
Didn't you say that there's two levels of tzaddik?
Yes.
And isn't the difference the passive thought? What's the difference between the two levels?
No, let's answer that question in a moment.
Okay.
A Beinoni may never achieve complete internal bliss, or I say will never achieve complete internal bliss. Maybe sometimes during davening he could achieve that, but he can still achieve complete behavioral victory. And that's his path, that's his journey, and that's ultimately extremely impressive and extraordinary in the eyes of God. The mission of the Beinoni is not necessarily, as I said it last week, how we termed it, is not to be perfect, that's the tzaddik, but it's to do perfect. Meaning to control your thought, your speech, your action, despite the struggles that are raging within. And there is tremendous beauty and meaning and purpose in that struggle, as Lynn said, mazel tov. Because you're in that struggle and that's how beautiful it is. What a parent does in the grocery store at the Shabbos table, which is to experience and practice self-control, this is what the Beinoni does consistently. The Beinoni's greatness is that he continually chooses to use this God-given ability that he has. So today's class, in one sentence, or maybe two sentences, is the Beinoni's greatness is not that he has no struggle, it's that he refuses to let the struggle control his behavior. We may not control every feeling or impulse that enters us, but we can control what we do about it. We'll conclude the class there.
And the second is moach shalit al halev.
Well, that's the ability. He can that's
What does that mean? The second is what?
Moach shalit al halev is that the mind rules the heart.
Oh, the mind.
Just so you asked the question, the incomplete tzaddik, the animal soul has absolutely no inner voice within him. Doesn't present any struggle. It's just that he hasn't yet converted it to the side of good. So it's like a prisoner, trapped, totally without any capacity and ability to express itself.
Okay.
So the animals, the tzaddik feels complete bliss. He doesn't have that voice and the inner tension, except he hasn't yet converted it, transformed the animal soul into a force for goodness. And that's the extraordinary level of the complete tzaddik. He's actually taken this animal within, and he's now becomes a chariot, a force, and a partner in his mission of serving God.
Yeah.
In fact, taking him further than he could have on his own, because now I have the passions of the animal soul, but just utilized for goodness.
Yeah.
And that person is unstoppable in what they could achieve.
Well, just, that you realize how brilliant the Alter Rebbe was with this, in grasping this, because it does give us that ability. Because I think to become, for me, I look at it and I say, for me to become a tzaddik, where that kind of stuff doesn't even, it's not even there, it just seems so far away. Right?
Yeah, more than that. Even if it seemed far away, but at least I can work towards it. That's a mistake.
Yeah.
Because the goal is not even to work towards it, because that's not your path.
Yeah. Right. The path is self-control. Right?
The path is the path of the Beinoni of serving Hashem behaviorally. And what happens is, one of the questions the Alter Rebbe is going to address, we're all administered an oath. He asked this question towards the beginning of Tanya. Before we're born, our soul is administered an oath to be tzaddik, to be a tzaddik. So he says, how do you address that if that's not our goal? And he explains that there's something we're supposed to learn from the tzaddikim, and from time to time to try to experience the tzaddik-like level, which is what the Beinoni does during davening. But really, the Alter Rebbe has a lot of things now he has to explain, but this is the groundwork. You have the ability to do it. Now he'll explain why you should have the conviction to do it. He'll explain, as again Lynn was saying, why does he create us in that way? Isn't the role of the tzaddik much more beautiful? And he explains the advantage in the role of the Beinoni, to how beautiful the struggle is and the overcoming of the struggle. And even though you will fail, despite the fact that you will make mistakes because you have that inner tension, when you overcome it, how beautiful and how special that is in the eyes of Hashem, and how much Hashem appreciates the level and the journey, the path of the Beinoni.
And it's even a higher level than
Yes.
the tzaddik.
Yeah. Any other questions?
If you have negative passive thoughts during davening, it's a symptom of a low-end rasha.
Low-end Roger? Oh boy. We're plunging.
The Alter Rebbe addresses that exact question. He'll talk about when you have negative thoughts during davening, what to do about it, and how actually it's a great sign. It's a great sign. It means you're alive. It means that you're doing something good. Because if you're not doing something good, then the animal soul wouldn't wake up to come fight this battle. They only show up. The weaker opponent only shows up when he thinks he can win.
Right.
He never shows up when he doesn't think he can win.
Right.
And therefore, when you're feeling the animal soul, it's actually a telltale that you're onto something.
That you're fighting.
That you're fighting, and that you're actually fighting something, a very worthwhile cause, which is another important aspect.
So when we are not talking about mitzvah and we're talking about like a